This happened back in February of 2009. For 5 years, I had been deeply involved in amateur ornithology and audio recording. My specific passion was capturing the pristine songs of rare winter birds. To get to the cleanest audio, you need to go deep into the quietest parts of the woods, far away from the highway noise. One freezing morning, I packed my recording gear and headed to a small, familiar patch of forest in upstate New York. I took my loyal companion, a large golden Labrador named Duke. To get to this trail, you had to walk through a decaying, almost abandoned settlement at the edge of the country. It felt frozen in time, with rotten fences and collapsed roofs. I let Duke off his leash since the dirt road was deserted. We were walking down the center of the main street when I spotted an old woman. She was standing by the rusted mail tube at the edge of the dilapidated property, dragging a heavy sled full of firewood. Suddenly, the hair on the back of Duke's neck stood straight up. He let out a vicious snarl and lunged toward her, barking aggressively. I panicked and deeply regretted my stupid mistake. The old woman shrieked, dropping her firewood in the snow, her harsh voice echoing across the empty street. I sprinted forward, diving into the snowbanks, and grabbed my Labrador tightly by the collar. I immediately started apologizing profusely, trying to pull my heavy dog back. But the old woman didn't care about my apologies. She turned to look at me, and her face twisted into a deeply malicious, ugly sneer. She spat directly into my face. Then, with surprisingly speed, she scooped up a handful of dirty, icy snow and threw it aggressively at me and my dog. She muttered something under her breath, staring right through me. It sounded guttural, like a dark, ancient promise that this would be our absolute final journey. Duke whimpered loudly, tucking his tail between his legs, and backed away, trembling violently. I whipped the spit off my cheek, muttered a few harsh curses at her, and quickly walked away, trying to brush the bizarre incident off. I checked my watch. It was exactly 10 o'clock in the morning. As soon as Duke and I crossed the tree line and stepped into the dense forest, the atmosphere drastically shifted. A violent, howling wind suddenly whipped through the tall pine trees. It felt like a massive, unnatural hurricane had materialized out of nowhere, specifically targeting us. Heavy branches were tearing loose and raining down, violently scratching my face and tearing my coat. The temperature plummeted instantly, chilling my blood. Duke started howling loudly, pressing his shaking body against my legs. Deciding not to tempt fate, and knowing I wouldn't be recording any birds in the raging blizzard, I immediately turned around to head back to my car. But my annoyance quickly turned into rising, suffocating panic. As I walked, I realized my surroundings were completely unrecognizable. I knew this small patch of woods like the back of my hand. You could easily walk from one end to another in 30-minute stops, but the landscape had shifted into the nightmare. The trees looked taller, twisted, leaning inward. The familiar hiking trail was entirely gone, replaced by endless, deep snowdrifts. Duke was completely terrified now, whinnying softly with his tail clamped tightly under his belly. He kept looking behind us, his ears pinned back, acting exactly as if we were being hunted. The wind intensified into a deafening roar, and the blinding, white-out snowstorm consumed us. For no logical reason, a wave of animalistic terror washed over me. My chest tightened so hard I couldn't breathe. It felt as though something impossibly massive and ancient was standing right behind my back, watching me, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I've never been a superstitious person, but the sheer, visceral horror I felt in that moment defies all rational description. My mind flashed back to the old woman's hateful face and her guttural muttering, and an even deeper, paralyzing fear gripped my heart. I started screaming like a madman into the void, but the howling wind swallowed my voice completely. No one answered. And then, the most terrifying thing happened. The sky above the thick canopy began to rapidly darken. The gray winter clouds turned pitch black. I checked my wristwatch again. The hands were frozen at exactly 12 noon, but it was night. My physical strength was draining away, leaving me weak and dizzy. It felt as if the forest itself was actively sucking the life force out of my bones. Duke collapsed into the deep snow, too exhausted and terrified to even walk another step. I had to drag him by the collar, stumbling blindly through the freezing darkness. I honestly don't even remember how we finally stumbled out of the thick tree line. 1 second we were drowning in the suffocating nightmare, and the next we were standing on the paved, cleared road. The weather was completely calm. There was no wind whatsoever, and it wasn't snowing. The air was perfectly still, but the sky above us was completely dark. It was the dead of night. I looked at my watch again, tapping the glass. The hands were still frozen at exactly 12 o'clock. I began walking with my exhausted, limping dog toward the direction of my parked car. As soon as we approached the edge of that decaying settlement again, Duke started whimpering loudly, refusing to walk past the old houses. We quickly bypassed the village through the fields, fortunately not encountering a single soul in the dark. I finally reached the main highway, where I had parked near a small 24-hour gas station. I walked inside under the bright fluorescent lights, shivering uncontrollably, and asked the tired cashier what time it was. She looked at the digital clock on the wall and said, "It's 1:30 in the morning, honey." A freezing cold sweat broke out all over my body. I had been trapped inside that tiny patch of woods for over 15 hours. In my mind, the ordeal hadn't lasted more than 2 hours. I drove home in total silence, calmed my frantic wife, who had been calling the police, and went straight to bed. I made a firm decision never to tell her the true story. I refuse to ever set foot in that forest again, and I will never drive through that cursed settlement. I am absolutely certain that the old woman was responsible for what happened.